The Six of Swords is called science, the gathering of knowledge, the knowing what is real about our world, and the application of it into our journey forward. On the Rider-Waite card we can see a literal journey, of where the character has gathered his family into a boat, along with the swords, and appears to be leaving the state of turmoil that we saw on the previous swords cards. So they are leaving a state of which was not working for them, and perhaps striking out onto new land to begin again. The easiest explanation of this card can perhaps be seen in its Golden Dawn version, where it is known as the Lord of Earned Success. And so, just as the character is leaving the turmoil behind here on Rider-Waite, we have earned a respite, found ourselves coming out of a difficult situation with a new understanding, of which actually benefits us in the end. We have grown stronger, and we have earned the success that we now begin, or at least we hope to begin, to see manifesting around us. On the Tree of Life we are Tifereth, in that world of Yetzirah, or the world of formation. This is interesting, as Tifereth is the Sephiroth with the largest number of paths linked into it and out of it. And so really it's the centre of activity on the Tree of Life, and all of the different paths come in and out of it like a wheel forever turning. And indeed it is the sphere of limitless light, because this wheel will always turn and always, like we saw, bring morning back after that time of darkness. And so here upon this card it's connected with the coming of what may be termed metanoia. We see this in religious iconography as concerned with the repentance of sins, or a type of spiritual conversion. And yet it can also simply mean a transformation of our being, a new perspective, a new understanding. And so we find ourselves transformed and able to focus more purely with a freshness and visibility in our mind on our spiritual quest, and not on that which was holding us back, for example, in the world, such as what we saw on the previous cards. Astrologically, the card is Mercury in Aquarius, and so we have the element of Mercury coming in here, bringing communication and intellect and that type of thing into the card, mixed with that air sign of Aquarius, of which is very intellectual, yet very likeable at the same time. And Mercury in Aquarius, with regards to astrological reading in people, may suggest inquisitiveness in one's nature, for example, perhaps somebody of whom is very inventive. And so we can see that element of science coming out there. For example, we're known within Aquarius to see that originality of thought, and it's been communicated very well through Mercury's ability to bring a clear perspective, for example, and to communicate things. And so it's a bit like a personification of science, of which may appear to us as detached and unemotional, and yet able to break things down into their separate components and understand them very well in their physical nature. However, as we shall see through this card, there is a need to bring together a duality of being that is the physical and the spiritual, and this is why scientism, or a very dogmatic and regressive science, is not actually true to its name. It's not actually bringing knowledge of the universe, because it is only exploring particular forms of which are found in the world, and not actually looking at the universe as a whole, either simply by ignorance or even by choice due to the spreading of certain dogmas and things. And we shall see in this card that that's not actually the best way of moving forward, because we can see in the centre of the card the most important symbol here is the rosy cross. Now this can have many different meanings. If we just have a look at it in its most basic form, it is a cube of which is outfolded, and we are in the centre, and so we are here enclosed by the firmament of the sky. We are children of this world, and we are looking up to that sky in our search for meaning, in our quest to understand who we are and where we've come from. The rose cross itself may show various symbols of astrology and esotericism, relating to the all that is. For example, its petals may show the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and in correlation to that, the 22 paths on the Tree of Life, of which in totality make up everything in the universe. Albert Pike, of whom is sometimes known as the father of modern Freemasonry, when discussing this rosy cross, likened it to the symbol of the ankh, simply meaning life. The meaning of life is simply to be alive, to be able to look at that sky and search for meaning, to ponder on our existence. And therefore he associated it with the Roman goddess of dawn, Aurora. And so we have a symbol of new beginnings, the new opportunities that the dawn brings us, such as we see in the Rubaiyat, where the characters are waiting outside of an inn at dawn, and they're asking for the door to be opened so they can go in and drink and live, because they know that they will only have that one day, a symbol of one's life, in order to do it. And so the fact that this is in the very centre of the card places it at great importance here, and so it shows that we are looking to understand our life, to solve the problems of which we've had before and learn from those experiences, and at the same time as this, actually apply these things physically into our lives. So it's no good just being a dreamer, for example. We have to actually be able to put into actual action the lessons of which we have learned. Otherwise they are merely information and not knowledge, the two being actually very different from each other. Now the rosy cross is positioned in the centre of this circle around the card, and the various different shapes around it. Now we have the return of pinwheel looking patterns here, representing the movement of air and the passage of thoughts in the mind, such as the reoccurring theme here on Swords cards. Here they are much less erratic than they were before. They have actually formed into a shape of which is able to move, and so it's suggesting, such as we saw on the Rider-Waite card, that we are in movement away from our troubles. We're actually making a little bit of progress. And yet the patterns in the background are actually rather interesting. They are not as esoteric as what they may first appear. The square and circle, far from being some type of hidden Masonic symbol, are actually related to fencing, and they are fencers' diagrams of which show the positions of which a particular sword fencer may stand in order to be invulnerable from attack, or so to win a fencing match. These type of pictures associated with it may look like mystical and esoteric symbols, and yet they are actually based entirely on geometry and upon the actual formations and recommendations of a fencing tournament. The image later became known as the magic circle, and today we associate that with something very different, and yet it is not a magic circle in terms of a type of mystical ceremony. And so this can be scientific in that regard. When we understand what this is, it is a dispelling of myth. It is an understanding of something of which can help us physically, such as if we were a fencer standing in one of those positions. It reminds me of the phrase from a song by Bad Religion: "Rain fell like judgment upon my window pane." It felt like judgment, but it was only rain. Once we understand what something actually is, it becomes much less frightening, and therefore we understand it and we can say, well, it is only rain, and if I close the window, I stop getting wet. So we're able to move on, we're able to actually see things for what they are and understand the magic in the reality of the world around us. However, there is that need for the bringing together of those opposites, and so we see the hilts of the sword here. They are all different colours, and this we can trace to something much more mystical. This is the path of the planets in the world of Atziluth, and together they form the shape of the hexagram, of which we have seen many times, being the as above and so below. The idea that when we peer to those stars and say, where did we come from and who are we, we find that when we understand something about the universe, we understand something about ourselves, And vice versa, to understand ourselves is to understand the universe. We are the mirror of heaven in that regard. And the movement of planets in Atziluth is the bringing in of the first of the four worlds, the world of archetypal creation, the primordial substance, the first words, the first emanations from the essence of God or creation, the singularity in the point before it expands and gives birth to divine creation. And so it's bringing that into Yetzirah, the formative world, and so it's combining, as above so below, our scientific understanding of the world with the fact that there is a spiritual basis to these things. And so, for example, this world of Atziluth may be concerned with what is called Shi'ar in the evolution of souls. Shi'ar being, again, life, like we saw before with the Ankh. The coming into knowledge that we all come from that same source, that light or that singularity. Doesn't matter how you want to interpret it. It's that part of our spirit, our soul, connected with all life, every living thing, every growing thing upon the planet. And so we come to understand that concept, and we embrace everything in creation and understand that everything in creation grows and develops. And we can see that on the card, in that the cross in the centre of which, of course, all the swords are coming together upon, is this bright yellow. And so this is Tifereth again, and is the sun, the light. And of course it is one with the rose, and so we have the sun, the father aspect, coming in to the rose, the womb of creation. And so we have a balanced, harmonious position, the swords gathering around it and pointing into this, implying that bringing balance, reconciling two things together in there, into that point of union, that macrocosm and microcosm put together, expressing it through ourselves, has allowed ourselves to actually move on from the defeat and the sorrow and the pain of which we have seen before. And we have grown because of these things. We have evolved. We have gained new perspectives and able to take them into ourselves and benefit because of them. We now know perhaps where to go. We have a greater awareness of what to avoid and things like that. And so, oddly enough, Crowley describes this in the Book of Thoth as the perfect balance of all the mental and moral faculties, something of which is almost impossible to hold in an ever-changing world, of which, of course, returns us to that growth and understanding. We may find ourselves believing that we are on the knife edge of progress and that we understand more than any other era in civilization, and yet every era was the same. And we have to grow, perhaps through trial and error, perhaps through situations which are, in their core, very difficult, in order to come out of them with a willingness to learn from them and to apply this new knowledge to our lives.